What's up, Canes fans? Peter Ariz here, bringing you today's edition of CanesInSight Daily. And as we do every week, today I will be breaking down tomorrow night's matchup with Jim McGill of BearInsider.com. Has been covering this team for 20 plus years, gives us a great idea of the state of the Cal program, the hype going into this game. Obviously, college game day going there. A lot of buzz surrounding this one in Berkeley. So excited to talk to him and get his thoughts on the game Saturday night, Cal Miami. Of course, this episode, as always, brought to you by the law offices of Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Dial 1-800-747-FREE to get in contact with them today. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. So before we get to Jim McGill from BearInsider.com, I wanted to, again, as we do every week here, it's a consistent theme. We bring you a lot of the same stuff every week. And today, the Beacon Adjustors Player of the Game. My prediction for this weekend, let me pull up BeaconAdjustors.com here. If your property has been affected by Hurricane Helene, Beacon Adjustors Group is here to help. With years of experience handling storm-related damage, we work tirelessly to ensure you get the compensation you deserve. From assessment to settlement, our team of trusted experts will guide you every step of the way. Don't face the aftermath alone. Let Beacon Adjusters Group restore your peace of mind. Call us today, and here you see beaconadjusters.com. You see all their services. A guy that Miami has not had his services is who I'm going with this weekend. Ruben Bain in his return. I am predicting a multi-sack game for him, a strip sack. I think this Cal offensive line has some holes in it, not completely healthy. They haven't necessarily been the strongest unit this year. And I think Ruben Bain comes out with his hair on fire. He's upset he hasn't been able to be out there the last few weeks. He's been resting up. There was some talk he'd be back last week, of course, gets that extra week of rest. And I think he comes out there and dominates this game. Again, my prediction is multiple sacks from him and a strip sack. So we'll see what happens, but huge to get him back on the field for the Hurricanes this weekend. And I think he makes a big impact. Again, Jim McGill coming up next here on the CanesInSight podcast. I wanted to talk to you guys about a great event happening next Saturday at my alma mater, Columbus, the Fred Foyo Brew Fest, Saturday, October 12th from 4 to 8 p.m. And it's a bye week for the Canes, so I know we got a lot of Columbus people listening to the podcast, a lot of ties with Mario Cristobal, Coach Mirabal, still very tight connections over there. And even if you're not a Columbus guy or woman, obviously, but bring your family out there. And as you see, you can get your tickets. I'll have the link in the bio. $40 tickets. You can get them here on ColumbusHS.com. Again, link will be in the bio. But the Fred Foyo Brew Fest, honoring a great man, should be a great event out there from 4 to 8 p.m. next Saturday at Columbus. Would love to see you guys out there. Already had some people hitting me up yesterday after I put the ad out there about it, and excited to see some of you out there. And would love to know if you guys will be out there. So hit me up about it for sure. But coming up next on the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, Jim McGill of BearInsider.com. All right, excited to be joined now on the CanesInSight Podcast, as we are every week, by the opposition here, Jim McGill from Bear Insider. Canes fans, go check out his site in preparation for this game this weekend. Here it is, Bear Insider, and you can check out everything he's done this week on the game coming up this weekend. Of course, college game day, going to be their first time in Cal Berkeley, and we'll get into that a little bit later here in the show, Jim. But again, appreciate you for joining us today. And as I like to do every week, before we get into the actual matchup itself, give us a lay of the land in terms of the state of the program over there at Cal heading into the season. Obviously, first year in the ACC. Justin Wilcox been there since 2017, which, of course, in today's era of college football, that's some longevity there, staying there in one place. So how would you describe the state of the Cal program heading into the season and now 3-1 start?
I'd say that it was a show me season coming into this year, not only joining the new conference, but being year 8 of Wilcox's tenure there. Last season was about to go off the rails when the team was 3-6 and looking like only one of the last 3 games was winnable, but they ended up sweeping the last 3, including ending the season crushing UCLA on the road. So some hope picked up, and they had a real nice portal class where they added a lot of depth. So taking a look at the team in the spring and in the fall, it looked like they had the type of quality depth they needed at most positions to have a pretty solid season. I think everybody has kind of set the bar at 8 regular season wins, and anything below that would be a disappointment. So expectations were, higher than they've been in recent years, I would say. But like I said, also, it was show me mode for most Cal fans because they've never had a winning conference season under Wilcox. The last time they won 8 games was in 2019, and COVID really derailed their progress after that. So it's kind of if you can't win now, when you've got a more favorable schedule and you've got the depth you need and the quality guys you need, when are you going to win?
Yeah. And look, there's some history here between Mario Cristobal and Wilcox. Of course, Cristobal, his time at Oregon, and Mario's been very complimentary of the Cal program and Coach Wilcox and their toughness and the way he's built the program over there. What do you remember from those matchups when Coach Cristobal was at Oregon?
Yeah, Cal has usually played Oregon tough when Cristobal was there, and they beat him in 2020 in a season that Cal struggled with it. They were very narrowly short from winning the shortened season Pac-12 North championship, but they'd lose on stupid things like a block extra point or something else, and Oregon was their only win. And they seem to have diagnosed Cristobal's style of play pretty well, but he's working with different tools now. He had quality athletes at Oregon, but he's working with a whole different crop of people at Miami now, and the portal has really changed things versus what they've seen in earlier Cristobal teams in Oregon. The portal wasn't really a factor at that point in time, and it is now. So you can assess your needs and bring in experienced guys to plug and play right away. So that kind of changes the equation a little bit. Plus, he's back home, and that dynamic can change things too. Oregon's not the easiest environment to operate on. It's kind of a fishbowl. And I know Miami can be that way sometimes too, but Oregon is particularly, a lot of flash and a lot of high expectations and a lot to live up to. So that can be a tough situation for a coach, even if they've got a talented roster.
Now we'll get to both sides of the ball here. We'll start at the quarterback position for Cal. Fernando Mendoza, obviously the ties to Miami, Columbus High School, which is where Coach Cristobal went and actually was high school teammates with Mendoza's father there in high school. So when you look at this offense, 99th ranked in terms of scoring offense in the country, but from what it looks like, Mendoza is not a guy who's going to, quote unquote, lose the game for Cal, right? I mean, how would you describe the season he's having and now a year and a half plus into his career there at Cal? How would you kind of describe him as a quarterback?
This season is a fairer time frame to assess Mendoza's ability than last year, because last year he came in mid-season after the first 2 string guys, QB1 and 2, got injured or had playing issues, performance issues, and he had come in with barely any reps in spring and in the fall. And he's a guy that is a real student of the game. So mentally he was prepared, but you can be as prepared mentally as humanly possible, but it can't replace playing when the bullets are flying. So he got a little panicky out there sometimes last year and turned over the ball too much. I think he had 15 TDs and 10 interceptions, but he fumbled the ball quite a bit too. And he gained 15 pounds of muscle, and he's taken some big hits, and he's been holding on to the ball. He's been making good decisions with the ball too. He has a 3-to-1 TD to interception ratio. So he's a guy, like you said, that it's seeming game after game, game by game, that he's probably not going to beat the team. He just needs to get protection. And the line has been kind of in disarray. 2 starters have been out most of the year. And, one or two of them will likely be back and playing this week. The hope is 2, but at least 1. And they've built some decent depth on the line as compared to previous years. Line's a place they've struggled quite often in regular in most seasons in recent years. But that depth, if they're not used to playing together, they're not going to play as a unit. And you could see at the end of the Florida State game how discombobulated they were with all the noise and the pre-snap penalties. And they have to avoid all that stuff to have a good chance to win. And if they give Mendoza a chance to set up and throw, he can have a pretty good game. But, that's a big if.
Yeah, and look, that Florida State game was the only game that Cal has lost this year. Obviously, a huge win on the road against Auburn, but that running game has been solid. Of course, Jaden Ott, one of the best in the country. He's been a little banged up this year, but Javion Williams has also stepped up. So first of all, how's Jaden Ott's health at this time, to the best of your knowledge? And Javion Williams, can you talk about that combo a little bit?
Ott is not at full strength. He did look better against Florida State than he did against Auburn. He had no lateral movement against Auburn. So I think he averaged about 5 yards a carry against Florida State. He still doesn't have that full explosiveness back. So I don't think you'll see 100% Ott, but I think you'll see a decent amount of carries. Javion Thomas is a guy that was a under-recruited true freshman that played some last year. He gained about 20 pounds of muscle and didn't lose any of his quickness. He's about a 10-700 guy. Wow. So he stepped in and had some really nice games, especially against San Diego State. So he's a guy that should be able to spell Ott pretty well. And there's a lot of depth behind those guys too. I mean, Kadarius Callaway, he averaged about 8 yards a carry in the San Diego State game too. And even Jamal Wiley, a true freshman, he reminds a lot of people. His nickname is Baby Marshawn, or Marshawn Lynch, and he's got that same kind of hard, wide base running style. So it's not Ott or bust for this offense, but he is the top dog in the backfield for sure.
Yeah, should be an interesting matchup in terms of the offensive line for Cal. Miami's defensive line, of course, a really strong unit, and Ruben Bain, their star, back this week. So sounds like that could be a matchup that determines the game. Now, in terms of the weapons on the outside for Mendoza, who should Miami fans, because this is a very young secondary for Miami, not a ton of experience there. And then Damari Brown, one of their top corners, has been out the last few weeks and going to be missing some more time. So who should Miami fans be looking at on the outside there as potential dangers?
Now, Isaiah Hunter has been the top dog so far. And he's a guy that came in as a true freshman last year and just was kind of overwhelmed. He couldn't hold on to the ball in camp, and he just was an afterthought coming into this season. But he worked his way up rapidly in the spring and in the fall, and he's been money. He's a 10-700 guy also, and he's pretty big, and he can stretch the field. They brought in a couple of portal guys that are very similar to each other, Mikey Matthews and Jonathan Brady. Both those guys are shorter, 5'10", 185, quick guys that can find seams and juke the D. Those are two other guys that are a big part of the passing game. And then the tight end room is a real weapon too. Jack Endries was a freshman All-American, and I think he had about 40 catches, which is a lot for a tight end. And then they brought in Corey Dyches from Maryland, who was all Big Ten tight end, and he's a unique guy. He's not super big, he's not thick, but he presents a lot of mismatches, getting into the seam and stretching the field and red zone. So those would probably be the main passing threats you'd see on the field.
Now, taking a look at the other side of the ball for Cal, obviously you mentioned Mario Cristobal's style has a lot of times been described as power football, but obviously with Cam Ward at quarterback for Miami, they've been spreading it out a ton. But this Cal defense, by the numbers, scoring defense at least, one of the top units in the country, I believe number 12 in the country right now in scoring defense, have not allowed more than 14 points a game this season. So where does the strength lie in that unit for Cal?
I would say up the middle is probably the biggest factor. Their middle linebackers in Kedu Uluave, who was a freshman All-American, and Teddy Buchanan, who's been one of the best portal transfers, I'd say, in the country. Those two are a great tandem up the middle. And then the defensive backfield has really been revamped. It was an Achilles heel last year where they really couldn't play much man defense. They were getting burned deep too often. Oregon really trashed them in the passing game, and they brought in a number of solid transfers. And Marcus Harris is probably the guy who's the key to that transfer group that came in. He's playing opposite Noel Williams. Noel Williams is one of the interception leaders in the country. And those guys are pretty close to lockdown corners. They're pretty deep at safety too, and solid in the nickel position, though they've had a little bit of injury there. So those would be the main strengths, I'd say. They have stepped it up on the pass rush on the edge a little bit from last year. Xavier Carlton's having a good year. David Reese, who was a transfer from Florida, who was their sack leader last year, he's not been living up to billing, but Ryan McCulloch has stepped in, and he was one of the nation's leaders in pressures before this last game. So the pass rush still needs work for sure, but it's improved.
Now, and look, that's been a huge strength for them, taking the ball away, 10 picks on the year. Cam Ward, over the course of his career, protecting the football has been something that he's wanted to improve. Of course, 3 turnovers last week against Virginia Tech, which kept them in the game, and obviously went right down to the last play there. So I think that turnover battle will be something to watch here. In terms of the atmosphere and the buzz around campus right now, like I mentioned, first-time College game days there. Marshawn Lynch going to be the guest picker for game day this weekend. But how would you kind of stack this matchup up in terms of the most hyped, the most buzz around it that you see? Because you've been covering this team, I believe I saw, since 2004, right? So right. You've been around there the last 20 years.
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to see a lot of buzz around this game. And if the team gets off to a good start, the stadium's going to be really loud. There's been a big push to getting a lot of students out there and to come as close to possible as a sellout as possible. And there's a lot of hype around game day. I think you're going to see a super large and enthusiastic crowd out there at 6 a.m., which is not the most fun start point for West Coast fans, but you're going to see a lot out there. So, as long as they don't do any head slapping moments to start off the game and put the team in a hole, I just think it's going to get louder and louder throughout the game. Cal fans can really get loud and riled up if it's a big game and they're playing well and they sense an upset coming.
So I got to ask you, man, the kumbaya between Miami fans and Cal fans on social media, it's been a little different. Canes fans can be combative, and Miami, obviously, a polarizing brand to say the least. But it seems like the Cal fans and the Miami fans have been getting along online this week. How would you describe the state of the fan base right now? And I asked you about the state of the program before the season, but now that they've started the year 3-1 and there's some positive momentum building, is this a real belief around the program right now? Is that a novelty thing now, now that they're in the ACC? Where would you categorize the Cal fan base being right now?
There's cautious optimism, and I think the reason you're seeing the Cal fan base interacting well with both Miami fans and all the previous opponents' fans is because the fan base is pretty clever and doesn't take itself too seriously. When the program was 3-0, they weren't acting like it was a top 10 program. They were having fun with it and kind of playing off the worst of the stereotypes of Berkeley and Cal, and just kind of embracing it and saying, here, you can have a little bit of that back in a funny way. So I think that's the way fandom should be. And everybody wants to see players, when they succeed, to be happy and congratulate each other, and instead of pounding their chest. And I think Cal, Wilcox has recruited the type of guys on his team that reflect his personality. They're good character guys. They're not big ego guys. And I think the fan base largely reflects that kind of a mentality. That's the kind of players that Cal wants to see. with the caveat that those good character guys be good players too, because you're not going to get anywhere having good character guys and having a losing season. So the hope is to combine the two. And so far this season, that formula seems to be working. But this is the big litmus test. As big a test as it looked like going into Auburn and Florida State before the season started, I think this was the one that most people had circled on their schedule as probably being the most difficult game and sort of a litmus test. So fans are super excited to see where they stack up.
And the last thing here before I let you go, obviously there was a bye week in between the Florida State loss and now facing Miami. What would you say some of the things the staff and players have kind of been focused in on over the past couple of weeks in preparation for this game? Obviously getting guys healthy like Jaden Knott, I'm sure that extra week of rest was big for him. But outside of that, what would you say the areas of emphasis were the last few weeks here?
The biggest thing besides getting healthy would be cutting down on mental errors, just not beating themselves. The pre-snap penalties were just completely inexcusable. I know Florida State got really noisy because they were desperate for a win, but you just can't shoot yourself in the foot. They've been good with not turning the ball over. That's a plus, and they need to keep that up, and they need to get back to generating turnovers too, and they're pretty good at that. But taking care of the ball and not beating themselves with silly penalties and just playing disciplined ball, knowing your count, knowing your play, knowing your reads, knowing everything that you're supposed to know and executing to the best of your ability. That's the biggest thing. I mean, scouting obviously plays a role too. There's a lot to look at with the Virginia Tech game. They know Ward pretty well, having played against him twice. They know Cristobal's coaching style, but there's a lot of other variables that you just can't prepare for that well. So they just need to focus on doing what they do the best and not beating themselves.
I'll say this, Jim. You said that the Cal fans are going to have to get out there early. It's a very early wake-up call, but us Miami fans, I think both fan bases are going to be taking a lot of naps in the middle of the day here because we got to stay up late to watch this one, but we're excited for it. Jim McGill, thank you once again. BearInsider.com. Again, Canes fans, go check out his work over there to get you guys ready for this one this weekend. Jim McGill, thank you once again for joining us.
Thanks. Looking forward to a good game tomorrow.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.